2-minute warning. Chat window open. You get on my best side? I'm not sure. I is what I is. I always get to see the side of my beard though. That's nice. All right, let's bring the music down. What do you think? It's great though, isn't it? This is Restream's music, cinematic it's called. I don't know if it tells you the actual song. Good beat to it. It's kind of exciting. Just turn it down a little bit. Block a little body there. I am pretty chill tonight. Sometimes I'm spazzing. Probably because I took like an hour and a half to set up. You know, slow burn, low and slow. Welcome to Let's Talk Tridactyls. Also known as home of the constant companion theory. I will be, using my shades off and on. I do have a nice light on, but I definitely feel more comfortable with this. And then I'll look at you when I mean something important. Wow. What a week. What a year and a half it has been following this phenomenon. And, you know, some people have been following this phenomenon since what, 2016? I don't know if I heard a 15 date from McDowell. I'm not sure. But as I take everything off that I piled on top of this, you know, I just got this book and you can see I'm not even, well, maybe about halfway, not even halfway through. And this is great fun, true adventure. You know, I'm always a little snarky about things. I think you know what it is. I'm a little punch drunk too from the Reddit skeptics, right? I've just resorted to, I don't even fight them anymore. Too long, didn't read. I just let the AI fight them. Yeah. It's like I have a cyber proxy to debate for me. Here, can you deal with this guy while I'm trying to do the real science? They're still talking about llama heads. But do yourself a favor. If you like adventure, I do want to warn you, I am a little snarky, and I'm going to say, Theory, you need an editor. Boy, if I can see some of those mistakes, that's bad, because if some of you know, I make tons of mistakes. In fact, Dry or Youngest, we do have a competition going on right now. We do have a giveaway for one of these heads I just had here, right? So we are going to give away a Josephina head. And since, Dry or Youngest, who I predominantly see in my Reddit group at Tridactyls, which congratulations to us. We just got to 1,000 of vetted people. Yeah. There's no funny business. I'm a former teacher and a former nightclub bouncer. So, and when I taught for like kids that were like on their way out the door of society. So I run the group kind of like that. And I notice some people don't like it when I talk tough in the other group, but sometimes a tough cookie needs another tough cookie, right? So we're going to have a competition. I'm going to give Dry or Youngest another 1% chance. We're going to roll on a D&D 100. So I'm going to see how many people are going to have a chance to give away. We've done this 2 or 3 times now. No one's won yet. So it's kind of getting exciting. And I've been crossing off the numbers. Once we called the number and like people didn't have it, we just crossed it off. So that's happening. Yeah, we got that competition going on. I did recommend that book. Here's another book too, by the way. Let's go ahead and look at this, because if you're chaos in the house, if you're into the phenomenon, you probably already know the book. But of course, I have to keep in mind that there's a lot of new folks coming, and I want you guys to embrace this kind of like how I embraced it and other people embraced it with the feverish the fervor, if you will, the fervor of a rabid fandom. So that's kind of how I've embraced the thing. So I like to have the little figures around. The head I have to carry with me at all times now, so we can talk about the morphology, about the occipital protuberance in the back and the supraorbital arches forming a heart-like shape, right? The heart-like face, the kappa, which I don't know if they have a name for it. It's a pneumatic area, though. This is pneumatic also. One of the clues that they have, marine beginnings. Yeah, that was probably one of the earliest clues about marine beginnings. But this book covers a lot of the, there's a nice one right there. Yeah, it covers the Paracas tapestries. Oh, there's a guy over here too, huh? Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and this is just one of those books that demonstrates that, hold on, these bodies aren't some one-off. This is something that's been with mankind for thousands of years, if not longer, which is why we call it the constant companion theory. We were never alone. Archaeology has been predicting some of the science, some of it. So we have some fun stuff to look at today. Since all these DICOMs are being released to researchers, universities, we're going to look at some of those today. And it's okay to share the images, Billy Carson. But I think a big channel like Billy Carson should probably let people know where he's gleaming his information from, which is tridactyls.org. My buddies over there, they're the ones that are uploading this and making it available to researchers, and then even making some files available to the public. So that's wild. And I think that's the way this science should be, is a little more transparent. They've been accused of slow dripping, and maybe they have. And the only reason I would say that is because I've been running forward. I've been working on this case, if you will. Is that what you call it, a case? For a year and a half now, full time. Here I am. I'm at my job right now. I'm sort of paying myself. So I'm not making money on anything, although I say that, but buy a t-shirt at tridactyls.com. We have our store. And you know, why did I go with tridactyls.com? I love to tell this story. My web designer said, you want .org or .com? And I said, well, I'm kind of the fun social studies guy. I'll take .com, save .org for the hard science guys. And here we are a year later, and we've got them on the case. And they're doing so good. Gonzalo Chavez, is that his last name? Oh, I always forget, sorry. No, don't do the drugs and the drinking, kids. It goes right to your head. So let's look at stuff. You're probably tired of talking to me, right? I also want to say, if you are watching on one of my chats, meaning one of my sites, so YouTube, Facebook, X, of course, and Kick, too. I'm on Kick. I'm not really super familiar with Kick. I guess that's for the kids. But the chat is a good way to talk to me. If you are interested, and I'm going to take people's opinions today. So if you want to come in, you can talk and say something. If I know you can come on camera, and I know you're going to be work safe, right? Be friendly. There's a lot of mean skeptics out there too, and I just don't have the time for them. You know, and I'm sure the people who've been researching this since 2016, I'm sure they are very tired of explaining that the llama head theory was just pareidolia at the end of the day. And that's super ironic. So when I did start tridactyls.com a year and a half ago, it was because I had a personal connection to these things. And that's from a 2002 anthropology class that dealt with the peoples of the Americas. And I recall these interesting heart-shaped face, almost playful beings. In fact, it was suggested they were monkeys in Bella Coola, Canada, so probably not monkeys, and in the Caribbean amongst the Taino people who lived amongst the islands. And both left these very rich petroglyphs, carvings in the rocks, tridactyl beings, heart-shaped faces. And I actually asked my professor, I said, Professor, is there a connection between the Bella Coola petroglyphs and the Taino petroglyphs? And he said no. What establishment archaeologists say, and mind you, I have done archaeology. I have pointed out the site and said, let's dig there, and pulled out an artifact. I've also monitored sites, so I didn't have to do any digging. That's the best job. But archaeology. Where was I? I think we're talking about my story here with that class. I recognized the being. So when I saw the bodies the first time, I, like most of you, was like cake, right? Cake. But I did think it was fake, and I ignored it. Luckily, my friend said, hey, why don't you check this out? And I don't know if it was at that exact moment or when I saw Dr. Zalce Benitez testifying, essentially, I don't know if it was a legal sworn testimony, but to his Congress. Now, mind you, he is a forensic officer for the Mexican Navy. Now, really, in my opinion, the skepticism should have ended with him, a forensic anthropologist for the Mexican Navy. But people suspect there was some sort of perhaps bigotry going on. What could Latin America know about aliens? Which they're not aliens, are they? No, in fact, that name doesn't work for me. I knew reptilians wasn't going to work, so I adopted tridactyls independently of anyone else. When I saw the theory's video was called Tridactyls, then I said, okay, I'm on the right track. I knew reptilians was not going to work, and I don't know how long Tridactyls is going to work. I get distracted as I go on. We're talking about the different petroglyphs. We're saying I recognize these beings, and I recognize them from that class, which led me to the Heitiki, the green stone of the Maori, little seated figures, bent cordiform heads, tridactyl fingers, tridactyl toes. And the Maori call that being, that greenstone being, an ancestor. Now, this is where it moves me, right here. Because that means somebody, maybe it was 1250 BC, I'm not sure when, somebody in the deep past knew of these beings. Now, you could say, well, that's just one-off, Ed. Yeah, but even the other cordiform shaped tridactyl limbed petroglyphs around the world seem to be associated with mother goddess imagery, water spirals, snake petroglyphs. Put those together, because I think even that water spiral, I've said in the past, I think the water spiral might just mean all of the above. The mother water serpent. Yeah. There's a lot of this water, life from water, even in our modern religions, back to the baptism. I think I'm getting a little too speculative. Let's leave that stuff for the fifth, what is it? The fifth kind with Paul Wallace. Let's leave Paul Wallace's Bible shtick. We're going to talk about the bodies. I wanted to give you a little archaeological background. These things have been around, nothing new here. Hit me up in the chat. Let me know you're listening. You hit me up in the chat, I'll give you a percentage chance to win this head of Josephina. Wouldn't that be fun? Okay. So I'm going to have to probably write down some numbers because people are going to be calling in and telling me what they want their lucky number to be. I'll write it on one of my little sketches as I try to figure out what the so-called insectoids. I can't even call them insectoids anymore. Theory, you better tell us why they're insectoids. Otherwise, I like xenomorph. I think culturally these beings are the Naga or the dragon. And before you scoff at dragon, there are people today who claim ancestry from dragons. See, we do a lot of laughing because we don't know. We're ignorant. We don't know the facts. And we can only laugh at the surface, what we see cursory. I think when we laugh at these things, we're laughing at our own ignorance. We know we don't know. And maybe this is the ontological shock. Because when you understand that various tribal cultures identified with things that look like our tridactyls and identified with them as mother goddesses, creator beings, fertility imagery, and ancestral worship, it starts to make a lot of sense. I like to say there is no funerary customs. There is no start of funerary customs. It's just ancestral worship. Let's talk about the bodies. So there's got to know that, as I said, there's the xenomorphs, which are called the insectoids. There's the so-called J-types named after Josephina. I'm not real keen on that name either, but that one's definitely kind of sticking. You know, to me, these are the yakshas or the yakshinas from Indian myth. Those of you that follow me along with the Constant Companion Theory channel, you'll know that I believe I've discovered a certain steganographic motif in the archaeological record through multiple cultures. And that motif is the arms as the face motif. In fact, you can kind of make it yourself when you cross your arms. So I see this in some of the ancient statuary where it seems as though this sort of imagery allows for the elbow to play the part of the temporal bone and the open spaces as the eyes. So I've seen this in Egyptian faience, in the Permian bronze culture of Europe, and of course in India. So yakshas. I don't know. Josephina types. What are we going to call these? I mean, again, I think the whole species or the whole genus or just the culture is the Naga. I think that's a great name for them. And we can get to how we got there, but it's still a trail down the road, and I don't think we're going to get there tonight. We're still working towards our bodies. And let's see. Let's go ahead and stick with this guy still. So, their morphology. I think I have to show you the pictures, guys. You guys ready? How many people are out there? I don't even know how many people are out there. Give me a shout out on the chats. I'm going to go troll around. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and give myself a screen here so you guys can look at something cool. And let's see. And that way I don't have to, you don't have to look at my face. So you're looking at the bodies right now. I just wanted to give you guys some time to take it in. It was I was creating a dramatic moment of silence with the groovy music playing in the background. I hope you like that. And we can turn this down. Okay. So currently we have 4 of the specimens up. We have the 2 more significantly primate. I don't even want to say human. I almost don't care about human at this point. We know that Maria has both bonobo and chimpanzee proper, as well as human DNA and a significant amount of unknown. I don't know why they haven't cross-referenced the unknown with the unknown of Victoria. So Victoria, not pictured here. Victoria is a seated tridactyl that is missing a head. Could be a tridactyl from mankind's past. You know what's great right now? As I'm looking at these, I'm noticing the difference in Albert's head versus Josephina's. So besides Dr. Zalce Benitez, another key inspiration for my research was he actually isn't a doctor, paleontologist Cliff Miles in the Miles Report. His paper was very significant, and he seemed to confirm with Zalce Benitez on some certain things. They had both agreed on various features of the beings, and that includes a lack of lungs, which also seems to be the case with Maria as well. You know, I don't know about Montserrat. I could check that out while we are talking about these guys. So Victoria, whose DNA was sampled, and Josephina, whose head we have, and whose her and Artemis were 2 of the most famous J-types, as they call them, the little ones, the Yaksha dwarfs. That's your possibly your real dwarf there, or the children could be. Well, you know, these beings change. They change because they may go through a metamorphosis, and not only that, but there's varying degrees of primate DNA. So, yeah, the 2 up top have less primate DNA, but I suggest they likely still do, especially since there is a xenomorph, which I do not have pictured at this time. That would be nice too. As we zoom in to Louisa, you see Louisa has her 3 eggs, which seems to be a relatively common amount. I don't know if the eggs have multiple larvae or not in them. Also, like the egg bearers, there is the metallic chest implants, which we thought maybe were to support fractured furculas. So what do we mean by furcula? We mean the fused clavicle, much like birds have. You know, the museum I worked for, I was warned not to say by my buddy. It's sort of my down earth kind of. Oh, I'm trying to be casual with you. When I worked at the museum, the Graves Museum, they had just got done welcoming a brand new exhibit on the furcula. So they had a small raptor about the size of smaller than a turkey. And we would bring the kids by on the tour and we would talk about the furcula. So to have the furcula come back into my life is pretty wild. So is that for repair? I have a second theory, which that is for metallic artificial breasts to perhaps feed the primates. We'll have to look more into that. Yeah. I thought those condyles were certainly interesting. That I did the again. See, I used to be a professional speaker, and now I'm umming away. Those condyles are suggested to be for a powerful neck. So that neck, we could say, it was erroneously stated that perhaps they retracted, and a better way to think of it is that they don't retract necessarily, but the necks are suggested to be able to extend. And you can see as we get closer to her face, like the Josephina, we start to see that cordiform shape, don't we? I don't want to draw in this right now. Okay, so we're speaking of necks, and I think neck above everyone else is Albert. Now I suggest, what if these beings are actually characters from history? That these beings are the so-called Anunnaki, the gods. Well, that's again, if we're talking about beings that represent creation, mother goddesses. Well, there you go. Weren't you always told in science class that you were evolved from amphibians? Wait, amphibians? We didn't even talk about that yet. Okay, so why do I say amphibians? Well, it's funny because Cliff Miles still wanted to call them reptiles, even though he's the one that noticed the lack of lungs. Lack of lungs means that these beings likely breathe through their skin, subcutaneous respiration. So when something doesn't have lungs, it kind of narrows it down what it is. Now you say, well, it's got a furcula. Dinosaurs have furculas. Birds have furculas. Does that mean it's a bird? Oh, and the bones are said to be hollow as well. So we could say, nope, Ed, it's not an amphibian. It's a bird. Yeah, the feet actually would seem to also indicate an amphibian, right? We have three-toed frogs and three-toed salamanders. And you know, the axolotl from the Aztec beliefs is held in high regard. Why is that? So we are looking at Mr. Albert here. And what if these are beings from history? Because Albert seems to be lame. And he too, like Louisa, has an implant. Is Albert really a being from our past, such as Hephaestus, aka Vulcan, the lame god? I mean, you could say I'm really jumping to conclusions here, but this is what we have. So what do those implants imply that either themselves or another advanced group of beings had the technology to make these things? Now there's talk of osmium. I don't care if there's osmium. I know they have metal implants. That's like whatever it ends up being, cool. Would osmium be more interesting? Yes. But even the diatomaceous earth that you can't really tell here, the white powder that they're covered in, that's interesting into itself because it wasn't discovered or invented. I guess discovered was the proper term, but you had to invent it to process it, right? So in the 1800s was when diatomaceous earth was first utilized. And these bodies had it from hundreds to thousands of years ago. What else can we say about their morphology? They have a singular radial ulna, so they don't have two arm bones. And of course, they have tridactyl limbs, right? But even those are kind of interesting. They don't have separate carpal bones. They have one singular carpal bone that goes to their one singular arm or leg bone. And then they also have an extra phalange. So their fingers are one phalange longer than ours. That will add additional tactility. They'll be able to pick up stuff better because they have the extra phalange. And I suggest, too, according to some of the myths, that they may have just used their two outer fingers as sort of tongs, according to the Greek myths, which maybe even think of perhaps chopsticks even. So we have Albert. You want to get a closer look on his face, I wouldn't doubt, right? We'll bring her down too. Yeah, so a couple other things I'm reminded of. If you're looking for these in the archaeological record, I suggest that not only do you look for the heart-shaped faces, but there's also this maxillary plate, this upper jaw here. Yeah, that there is kind of triangular, and in the art you'll probably see it even more so. It might draw your attention if you see like a trapezoidal piece. It might drag your eyes to something where then it could possibly lead you to a cool find. I find that in a lot of the depictions, the nostrils are depicted, the mouth is depicted, and I'm talking in various archaeological records, but that's not what this show is about. Okay, let's take a look at Maria, who is a favorite. So we were talking about these guys being possibly amphibians. I'm also hoping and suggesting that perhaps we will see more clearly in the eggs of Artemis, where I thought I discovered at least two, if not more, tridactyl fetuses in the eggs of Artemis. And I believe the fetuses are going to follow a salamander larva stage. That is, front legs first. And part of the reason I'm thinking that is from the archaeological record. I found various petroglyphs that depict what's called the child character, or Ji in Chinese. And that appears to show a serpentine stick figure. So I saw this character repeated in Chinese language, in the Semitic text. Yes, I almost said but I didn't. And in the American West. the child character, a serpentine stick figure being. So that was one of the clues where I started to see, oh, I think these beings may go through a metamorphosis. And if they are amphibians, that makes sense. And that's what I found interesting about Maria. I was looking at Maria and I was looking at Luisa's back end, as one does. And I thought that perhaps their back end remind me, that's a little hard to see, I think, on this diagram, of a frog. So we are looking at the back end. No, we're not. I lost the screen, it looks like. Oh, I see, because I went too large. Let me go ahead and share that again. Seems like I left my universe there. Okay, we're looking at the back end again of Luisa. So on the right, of course, is the egg, so that's her stomach. So look at that. Look at that strange. I never really noticed that until I started looking at her, just the past few days. Look at that strange backbone. Interesting. Okay, let's zoom in. Pan down. Okay, so this back end here, and again, if we turn it a little bit, it had this sort of angular look to it, this backbone. And even when you look, I don't know if we go under her on this one. I don't think I have that set up to go under her, unfortunately. Not sure how to move that. We can do that with perhaps Maria. So Maria, I also, again, of course, it's going to be is not as significant, but Maria too, you give us a little more picture. Maria too seems to have what's it's fused lumbar. It's the last few backbones are sort of fused into a singular piece. And let's see. Which would make sense because guess what? Maria, like her compatriots, does not have a coccyx. Coccyx is essentially the remains of your primate tail. Whoa, what is that? What did I zoom in on, guys? Oh, yeah, that's kind of creepy. Is there like a pattern? I don't know. That might be a digital echo or something. I'm not sure. I'll have to ask the experts. That kind of, those lines kind of look like some sort of digital echo, I would imagine. But they kind of, at first I was like, where am I? I thought I was looking at skin. Okay, so what are we talking about on Maria? We wanted to look at her butt. So we got to go find her body again. I got a little, there we go. Okay, we can only go to a couple. There we go. Yep. Let's zoom in. So probably hard to tell here. We can always open some other slides if we had to, but I don't want to get into a technical race with myself on where these things are. So this is good for now. But the point being, again, just to emphasize, is that it looks like Maria doesn't have lungs. It looks like she doesn't have a coccyx. And frogs don't have a coccyx. Why? Because they lost their tails. Isn't that weird? We retain the tail? Huh. Who's the animal here? So, and Maria doesn't have a navel. She doesn't have a belly button. That means she wasn't born with an umbilical cord. So if someone like dear Luisa, Josephina, Artemis have eggs, did in fact Maria start life on this planet as coming out of an egg? You know, there's another piece of information as I talk about this planet. So another weird bone on, again, I don't think we're going to be able to see it here. on the smaller ones, maybe Albert, we could see it, is there's something called a gastralia, which is found in reptiles. So we do have something that you could say, well, that's a kind of a dinosaur trait. And that is hard for me to see here. I can usually spot it from up above, so we might need another expert. I am not a paleontologist. In fact, even in my physical anthropology class, it was one of my lower grades, I have to admit. But the gastralia is sort of a floating stomach rib, and it's meant to help with their semicircular rib cage, which kind of looks like the omega symbol, but that's another story. So, yeah, the gastralia, a lizard trait and a dinosaur trait. Let's move on to our next one, who I haven't looked at in a while, and that's Montserrat. She is the one with child. Hey, look, I got some people here. I think I'm still alive. Maria doesn't have a belly button. Let's put Gears' comment on. Gears is always good to show up. All right. Hey, Gears, are you gonna enter into the win the Josephina head? Because if you are, you're gonna have to pick a number. Let's see, where is that? I had it out already, but let's see. There it is. Okay, so those of you guys who are following along on the competition, we have this many numbers. We've done a couple of different rolls so far. In fact, you can see we've gotten a 17 and a 46 and 11. So yes, we have played this 3 times. No winner yet. And you notice that there are empty slots. Is Gears on here now? Yeah, he is. He's got 19. Gears is going for number 9, which Jack already has. Pick again. Okay, so he says Maria doesn't have a belly button. That's correct. So that's big, right? I know. It's like sometimes, even as a researcher, you hear a fact, and sometimes it's so wacky, you just kind of forget it and you move on because maybe you're into a different topic. But yeah, that one's come back to me. So we're waiting for Gears to come up with that. In the meanwhile, let's go back to Montserrat. We're going to zoom into Montserrat. Good. Let's look at her butt. Whoa. So yeah, that's when you start to look at that lower spinal cord, it does seem odd, doesn't it? There is this. It looks like a sort of almost like a rod. They describe it as, and that could be the remnants of an amphibian lifestyle. 29. Okay, let's go ahead and add 29 to our chart because I would hate to actually forget. So Gears. So we're gonna go live again Sunday, and I will do another roll, and we'll see who wins. I'm rooting for you, Gears, because you show up. All right, because you show up. So let me talk to you about something. There was a study. I know I yoinked the video from somewhere. I think it was this study that maybe they did a lecture in Asia, in an Asian country, and they had suggested that the pneumatic chambers, what I call the kappa after the Japanese myth, and back in their occipital protuberance there, these pneumatic chambers indicated a marine beginning. And they also did some testing on minerals within the skull, and it suggested in the pneumatic chambers, marine beginnings. because it results in minerals that you would find in the ocean or in a saline environment. Now, I've sort of traced this whole mother goddess as serpent complex, I think is the proper term for it. The serpent worshiping complex. But let's get it straight. A serpent's not a snake. These weren't really snake cults. And even when you see snakes, the snakes are just symbolic stand-ins. In fact, pretty much any animal in humanity's history that has some sort of mythological or cosmological significance is likely because there is some element about the animal that either looked or acted like in behavior the tridactyls. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah, right. Exactly. So we're looking at Montserrat, who, of course, is curdling her womb. She is with child. Raphael is within. I don't know if we can see Raphael from this shot at all. There's her implant. And again, I'm not going to really play too much with the imagery at this time because I can be a little technologically clumsy, especially when I'm trying to run a show and talk at the same time. So the beings have implants, and they're likely proto-amphibians. So why do I say proto-amphibians and not bird or reptile? Because the amphibian traits essentially take precedence. Because a lungless creature is a older ancestor. So, like the salamander clade, the salamanders are some of the oldest species morphologically on the planet. So it may not. What the theory could be is that, okay, well, they had a furcula and a gastralia, and then they undeveloped lungs and became lungless, but that doesn't really make sense. So it seems as though for this to work, this morphology, that means these creatures have to be far enough back in time that they represent an ancestral species to creatures that have furculas, gastralias, and maybe subcutaneous respiration, which also means they have subcutaneous waste removal, which is interesting because in amphibians, it's an ammonia-like smell. And if you're following the lore, whether it's the Varringa alien in Brazil or reports of sulfur-leaving demons, well, this waste through their skin and that odor of ammonia could explain the lore of bad smells. I'm not trying to make a theory fit into nothing. This is what we found. This is what I found because, as we said, it is a bit of a slow drip, right? People aren't being as forthcoming, perhaps, as they should. And we haven't had as much cooperation as we could. I probably would have moved a lot faster if I had one of the paleontologists on my team. But the paleontologists have mostly poo-pooed this. And despite the level we are at, because even with all of this stuff, we also have the DNA. What else do we have? Multiple species. No evidence of manipulation. No one cut off any fingers. Now, there is obviously manipulation, but those implants have flesh growing back around them. So those were done, and we survived those for skin to grow back. I suggest that perhaps the culture of trephination, and who knows, maybe even Caesarean sections come from these beings. if we were to look at Artemis right now, which I could probably pull up now that I think about it, I can just go to Theory site. So I want to thank tridactyls.org for the images tonight. Without them, this would not be possible. Please go to tridactyls.org, interact with the site yourself, and go to Theory site, where I'm going to go to right now. Let's see. I can probably just put that thing right there. Nope. I'll have to open up. Let's go. If you haven't been to Theory site, I mean, this, like people say, this is the original. Let's look at it again. Looks like we have to go back. It'll probably yoink us out of the site if I leave it. So why are we looking at Artemis? We're looking at Artemis because she may demonstrate yeah, I'll have to share it again, it looks like. No, they might have some sort of, let's see, there's another way to share this. Share window. Let's try that. Okay, there's Artemis. What happens if I go full screen? Yay. Okay, so when you go to the Alien Project site, definitely interact with these. So you can take off the diatom layer, so that's the diatomaceous earth. Like such. We can also move in. It's a little different, I think. Okay, you can start to see that Artemis seems to have several implants. And remember, I suggested that, are these beings from history? Is this Dionysus who faced having the operations, if you will, by vultures? And there's a similar myth in Chinese myth also, that an emperor who failed to save the people from the flood was set upon by owls and turtles. Owls and turtles. I think we know. Okay, we can remove the tissue. That's kind of cool. There we go. Artemis. And you can see the other specimens up top. So it's not like myself or others are pushing like, hey, we got one alien body here. You know, if we had just one body, I think there'd be a lot less talk. It'd be like, okay, well, you have one anomalous situation. But there's multiple specimens. You can even focus just on the implants. Oh, the eggs stuck around though too. So I don't want to spend too much time on their site. You should probably just go there yourself, you know? Okay. Stopping the share here. I think we have been doing this now since almost an hour. So I do have 10 more minutes. So I do like to try to do an hour show. So if anyone else has any comments or even gear, we can go check out I always like to check out my Twitter site. Why not? Because there's always something cool I can show you there. Whatever the last thing was I posted. I've been pretty focused on the bodies, but normally I try to spend time in the archaeological record and try to demonstrate, hey, here these guys are. Okay. Yeah. I see there's people saying, seriously, I need more info. Yeah, I should probably get back onto the Twitter only because I have people's questions to answer, right? Let me go ahead and let's show what we have on our site. I see we're live. How cool is that? Yeah. There we go. All right. So what do I want to look at? Well, we were talking about the various heads and some of the morphology. So why don't we take a look at this? So what I did here was I used a cutout of my head, my sample, and then what I found in the CT film is what appears to be within one of the eggs a tridactyl skull. And now people suggested this was pareidolia, which is ironic considering that's what the llama skull exactly was. And you can see we got some nice labeling there. Kappa isn't on there, but I can usually find it. It is, so if you want to be able to find it, it is the lowest point between where the occipital, the supraorbital, how many times I said that? This is written for me. The supraorbital ridge and the sagittal crest, right where those two meet and sort of end. The sagittal crest ends, the supraorbital ridge ends, and there's that little space there, and that's where the kappa is. That's where the pneumatic. And again, the kappa is my own original name, so don't expect to say to some scientist, what's a kappa? It's a pneumatic chamber is what it is. So let's see. Let's get a comment here. Do you remember the Dr. Jonathan Reed comparison, as well as the comparison with the Russian alien hoax in the snow? Yeah, those are both pretty darn good, aren't they? Those are pretty darn good. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, one looks like the hybrid beings, and the other looks like the smaller being. So here we go. Check this out.
The
I don't know if
eggs
you can hear this. Probably
of the
not.
tridactyl specimen.
That'd be cool if you could, huh? I don't know how that works.
No.
So that's okay. We'll just use this anyway. So this is the footage of Artemis.
The eggs appear to be.
And I think Louisa has a similar thing happening. It looked to me as though the egg was in the process of hatching when this
in the eggs,
perhaps calcification occurred. Who knows? Maybe it tried to escape, and I don't know. I don't know what happened, but I'm reminded of other myths. So I suggest that the ancients, Chinese, knew of these beings, these larva stage of the tridactyls, known as pig dragons, Hongshan pig dragons. It's another shot of the eggs and what appears to be the erupting head, which again I see that same serpentine shape in Louisa.
There it goes.
That is the face of the being.
You have the upper view, looking down.
Top view.
Or looking upwards at its chin.
So, yeah.
Is that a face of a tridactyl fetus?
Definitely check out my page too. But again, tridactyls.org and Theory's page are the best. So this simple post has gotten a lot of attention. In fact, so much attention that Billy Carson yoinked it and didn't give tridactyls.org or myself any credit. Which, of course, I don't mind people copy and pasting things. That's why I don't put any sort of logo on this. It's not really my image, right? Why would I put a logo or a water stamp on this image? I didn't pay for the scan, right? So, but I do like to share it. Now, maybe if I after I alter the art, then I feel a little bit like I did something to it, sort of thing. So, yeah, Billy Carson yoinked this. I just wish you could, but for being someone we want to get the word out, it would have gotten the word out more. It would have led people to us, and they could have asked questions, right? So here's his yoink. Now, mind you, this is after Billy Carson had I don't know how long ago. I think it was just last week, Billy Carson ended up posting a map of what he thought was a Turkish subterranean city, and it turned out to be actually a Dungeons and Dragons map. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, we got buddy on here. Were you saying, Gears? I have your comment. I'm not sure what you mean. Because you took the screenshot. Oh, LOL, what? Oh, unbelievable. Which one? Which one? The D&D map? So, just saying, you know. We talked about the xenomorphs tonight. Again, I can't stand insectoids. Killing me. I thought this quote from Homer was interesting. Although mortal make, not human, lion fronted and snake behind, a goat in the middle. Homer, circa 750 BC. Could the tridactyl xenomorphs be the explanation for countless tales of strange mythological beings, from dragons and sphinx to the polycephalic chimera? Chimera. We got about 2 minutes left here. Unbelievable. Yeah, the map. Good stuff. Here's some other funny stuff since we're on the attack. I don't know if you guys know, but Lou Elizondo, of course, admittedly ran a torture facility. Well, part of that torture was force feeding the prisoners Ensure. So don't do that. I'm just saying, are we going to trust somebody who ran a torture facility? I don't know. I think he better cough up or shut up, right? So anyhow, I think that is going to be a wrap. We looked around. We saw some cool stuff. Feel free to contact me. We're going to do a roll-off on Sunday. Probably do it in the afternoon. And we'll see who wins this tridactyl head. I have another one also. So I think that one might be going to someone already. We'll see. I think it's already a sign. Let's keep going. Yeah, live long and prosper. You don't have to come up with a new tridactyl symbol, although they're all good, aren't they? There's this one. Here you go. Here's this one, right? Oh, yeah, there's that. That's cool. Do that. Do this. I like this. Too fun. I appreciate those good words. Let's put that on the screen so people can see it. Brethren, you will make history. Never give up. Who was the U.S. scientist that admitted they are real? Dr. McDowell. McDowell said they are not human. And it's funny. People are now they're grafting towards McDowell, but remember, McDowell is all on board for Maria. They're suggesting that maybe he's not on board with the little ones. I say he is. Yes. All right. I am definitely out on that one. Signing off. Live long and prosper.